Previously on Higurashi When They Cry console arcs. Predicted. The disaster.
それ、本当の話なんですか？今の科学技術で、そんなことができるなんて聞いたことがないですよ。
原理は知らない。私は地質学者じゃないからね。ただ、それにしては救援活動の初出が早すぎる。しかもレスキュー隊のリーダー格の中には、上長の命令でその日の年給を直前になって取り消された者もいるらしいんだ。
One of whom was a specialized engineer. And despite the unprecedented nature of the situation, many seasoned veterans were able to deal with the incident. Could that be evidence that this wasn't an unexpected disaster? Like a fire or earthquake, but something that was anticipated? Correct!
しかしです。もし事前に分かっていたとすれば、みすみす村人全員を見殺しにしたということになります。
Oh, it's worse than that. I would argue that they basically murdered the villagers themselves.
数にして2000人ですよ。
まだ増える勢いだそうだね。
それが本当なら、天才じゃなくて人災ってことじゃないですか。冗談じゃない。そんなことあっていいはずが。
It was an unusual story. There was certainly a strong political influence, so I could understand why the higher-ups ordered the investigation to be suspended. However, despite given the wealth of evidence we collected and the high probability of success, the higher-ups never provided an explanation for why they made that order. Thanks to that all-too-perfect timing, Kano-san and I had very little doubt. It was entirely possible that someone on the inside was leaking investigation data.
この前の件もあって、私のところは古い部下でさえ、どこで誰と繋がっているかわからない現状だ。君のところは？
いえ、お恥ずかしいことですが。
だろうね。そんなわけだから、赤坂くんに頼みたいんだ。ちょうど火球に関わっている山はないみたいだしね。
それも例の件がなくなったせいなんですが。
それはお互い様だよ。それに一度とはいえHinamizawaの地に足を踏み入れたことのある君なら、そこいらの捜査員よりも勘とか人脈とかがあるんじゃないか。
加納さんにそう言って信頼してもらえるのは光栄なんですが。
なあ、赤坂さんはご存じないかもしれませんがね、Hinamizawa村では毎年たたりが起こっているんですよ。Oyashiro-samaのたたりが毎年6月に綿流しの日にね。
まさかそんなこと。
Impossible. After saying that, I began to laugh. Watanagashi. An icy chill ran down my entire body upon hearing that word. And then I remembered the prophecy I heard from Rika Furuti 5 years ago.
平和がこの村に。これから毎年血生臭いことが起きるのに。
That was when she told me in detail about the tragedies that would unfold in Hinamizawa over the next 4 years. And they all actually came true. Even that it would occur all on the day of Watanagashi in June.
しかし、それではあのガス災害もたたりだって言うんですか？神様のような頂上の存在がありえない力を振るって天変地異を起こした。
I've been thinking about Hinamizawa ever since I lost my wife 5 years ago. Now that the village is no more, it's time to unravel the mystery behind these prophecies. And Rika-chan. If the tragedies unfolded just as she predicted, then there must have been some dark conspiracy behind it. I want to find the truth. No, I have to.
大石さん、わかりました。一緒に調べましょう。お社様のことを。ちょうど私もひなみ沢村について詳しく調べたいと思っていたんですよ。お社様でも何でも徹底的に調べましょう。
ありがとうございます、赤坂さん。あなたにご協力いただけると助かりますよ。
そんな私が今や父さんと同じ刑事さんか。
Tomoe imagined the face of her late father as she gazed down the runway. Tomoe's father, Yusuke Minai. He was strict and quiet, but at the same time he was gentle and had a strong sense of justice. And he was the sort of policeman that Tomoe was proud of. She never spoke to him about his work, but when she spoke with her father's colleagues and superiors, they all had nothing but praise for him. It was no solace, but when she saw the sheer number of people crying at her father's funeral, she understood. And at the same time, it made his departure all the more heartbreaking. Nevertheless, Tomoe didn't even learn that her father was a member of the Metropolitan Police Department until she was accepted into the recommendation group by the National Police Agency.
なんでこんなところに。
Kakuuchi Airport was a bit far from the city center. She had traveled with her family many times, but never to this airport. Yet, her father was definitely visiting this airport several days before the accident. Plus, they had no relatives in this area, so he had no reason to visit here unless it was related to the case. 12 years later, she still didn't know.
父さん、
She wanted to hear the answer. What was he pursuing? What was he trying to find here? Or did he find it? She didn't know. She just couldn't understand it.
お姉ちゃん。
After hearing what she came here for, Tomoe carefully turned back. She could hear a small sigh from Monica behind her.
毎年よく続けてるよね。もう12年も経ったのにさ。
まだ12年よ。年号だって変わってないわ。
13回忌はこの前過ぎちゃったけどね。
Truly, Maka thought it was time to move on. Her sister Tomoe had been visiting Kakuuchi Airport on every Wednesday in June since she discovered her father's old belongings. Even before she was transferred to Kakiuchi, even back in Ibaraki, every time. Even when she was a student with limited funds for living and traveling expenses.
大学の時の彼氏ともそれが原因で別れたのよね。よその男に会いに行ってるなんて疑われて。
父さんはなんで12年前この柿内空港に来たんだろう。そしてメモになんでそのことだけを残していたんだろう。毎年ここに来ていろんな資料を見て調べたのに全然そのことがわからない。
ただのメモ書きだったんでしょ。それに6月だって言っても12年前と今とじゃ同じはずないじゃない。わかる方がおかしいわよ。
そうなんだけど、そうなんだよね。
Her tone sounded unnatural. Of course, it must be disappointing after 12 years of coming here to watch these planes. But Maka knew her sister was strong enough to handle it. Otherwise, it would be difficult to get through this without support, wouldn't it? And so it continues. Greetings, my name's Neosekken, and welcome back to my Let's Play the Higurashi When They Cry console arcs. So, I'm hoping today will produce a lot more interesting events for us to witness that will in turn give us a lot more interesting information to digest, because while there were a couple points in the last episode that did spark my interest, they were few and far between. So, put another way, I hope today's episode will be a little bit more mentally stimulating than the last one. Fingers crossed. On the same day, Kakeuchi City.
なるほど。
Hey, it's Angel Mort.
ご事情はよくわかりました。
After downing the remains of her now lukewarm coffee, Inspector Minai looks up at me from across the table. She seemed to slightly furrow her brow. No, she definitely did, but I didn't draw attention to it.
お忙しい中、お手数をおかけします。本来なら、一番近隣にあたる沖宮から捜査を行うのがベストなんですが、現状では。
A couple of days after Ooshi-san and I met up, we visited Okinomiya in order to conduct our investigation. Unfortunately, Okinomiya was still in a state of disarray in the wake of the disaster, so it was impossible for us to obtain any inaccurate information, much less anything related to our current investigation. Conversely, all we received was ardent opposition from those we questioned. Not only was it the locals, but all of the disaster relief workers we encountered treated us with disdain, which further complicated our work. So, after consulting Fuushi-san, we decided to refocus our efforts onto Kakeuchi City.
しかし、どうして県境を越えてこの書き写しを？別に難癖を申し上げるつもりはありませんが、鹿骨市近隣の町村は他にもあったはずです。
いっぱいありました。ただその中でも柿内市は5年前のダム建設騒動以来、南沢から転居してくるご家族が他と比べても一番多かったんですよ。しかもこの町は見たところ他県だけあって、例の大災害に対する関心が全体的に低い感じがします。
それがどういう？
つまりですね、この町のように安定した都市部に住んでいる人たちなら、他と比べても理性的な応対が望めるかと考えたのです。たたりに対する畏怖心が強いと、どうしても情報提供に二の足を踏んでしまいますからね。
はあ、そういうものなんですか。
それにもしもこの災害の背後で組織だった政治的陰謀が本当に動いているとすれば、いずれこの町にもその影響が及んで捜査がやりにくくなるかもしれない。ですから一刻も早く。
すみません。お気を悪くされるかもしれませんが。
With a tilt of her head, Chief Inspector Minai carefully pondered her words before speaking again.
自分は刑事課の人間なので、公安の方の、特に政治レベルの捜査をお手伝いするのは筋が違うかと思います。そもそも話が大きすぎて、いきなり理解するのはいささか。
そうですね。
それに、自分の職務は犯罪事件を捜査することであって、犯罪自体の存在の有無を確かめることではありません。その点はどうかご理解ください。
失礼しました。つい気持ちがせいてしまって。
Before I knew it, the conversation trailed off and the temperature in the room started to feel unreasonably warm, so I cleared my throat while trying to pull myself together. Chief Inspector Minai wasn't purposely being dismissive. Her opinions are completely valid. Just because I discussed the possibility of a conspiracy surrounding the gas disaster in another town doesn't mean that they have to follow up on it, especially when they don't even work in that prefecture. But there was still something we wanted to ask, something we needed from her.
巴ちゃんには少し前に看護師衝殺事件の件でご協力お願いしましたよね。あの件について何か分かりましたか？
ええ、少しは。それが？
今回の一件はそれとも大きく関わっているんですよ。4年前からhinamizawa村ではOyashiro-samaのたたりと言われる殺人事件が毎年起きているんですが、あの衝殺事件もその一連だと私は睨んでいます。そしてあのたたりの数日後に大災害が起こって村人全員が亡くなった。
警部が立ち会われた事件と私たちが調べようとしているOyashiro-samaのたたりによる大災害、偶然にしては時系列が並びすぎている。ですからこの2つの件では共同で捜査を行う方がお互いにとっていろいろと都合がいいかと思います。
なるほど。
Chief Inspector Minai laced her fingers and pressed them against her chin in contemplation. Then, while gazing at her now empty cup of coffee, she broke her silence.
自分もあの事件にはどうにも引っかかるものを感じておりました。その背後にあるものがhinamizawa村のたたりにまつわる可能性があるというのならば、その正体を暴くことは例の衝殺事件に関する手がかりになるかもしれない。その意味での共同捜査は自分にとっても悪くないお話です。
そう言ってもらえると助かります。それに
Ooshi-san and I are outsiders, you could say. Gathering information on whoever lives in this town and what's around the area, but just based on data compiled in official documents, has its setbacks.
私たちには残念ながら土地勘がありません。郷に行ってはの例えではありませんが、その状態で見当もなくむやみに捜査を行っても本来求めるべき正確な情報をつかむことは難しいでしょう。
そうですね。それにこの町の人は割と淡白な傾向ですから、普通に聞き込みをしても有効な回答を得るのは結構骨が折れると思います。
Well, that's okay. I got a good set of pliers I can use. Investigating such a tight-knit community like Hinamizawa is a huge problem. Is huge a problem? I think they meant to swap those words around. Is a huge problem for law enforcement. People are fiercely loyal to each other above all, which severely limits the amount of information we're able to gather there. But on the other hand, the atmosphere in newly founded communities also has its own issues. When people feel completely indifferent toward their neighbors, they might not pay enough attention to even know any meaningful information in the first place. Apathy is a bitch. There have been plenty of times where information gained from each witness is very ambiguous, and in some cases even inaccurate.
あとよそ者の刑事が好き勝手に捜査を行えば、そちらの刑事課さんにとってもいろいろと問題があるかと思います。ですからまずは警部にご了解と、できればご協力もお願いしたいと考えた次第なのです。
なるほど。うちも一家はともかく二家は口やかましい人が多いので、お二人の捜査に難癖をつけることがあるかもしれませんね。それについては私の方で何とかします。
Well, if they still object, tell them that they can just go sit on a beehive.
助かります。
とは言っても例の事件はお隣の県警さんの管轄ですから。所長黙認とはいえ自分の方で越権行為を働いたことが後々問題になれば、逆に大石さんたちにもご迷惑をおかけするかもしれませんよ。
まあそのあたりは杓子定規に考えないで広域捜査の一環ってことでお願いしますよ。ともいちゃんは腐っても警察庁の広域捜査官の肩書きをお持ちなんでしょ。ですから私たちの捜査にちょいと口添えをいただけるだけで大助かりなんですがね。
腐ってもってのが一言余計です。
Unsurprisingly, Chief Inspector Minai raised her voice toward Ooshi-san next to me. Nevertheless, for a young member of the career group, she had a soft demeanor, not a hint of pride.
わかりました。公安の警視直々と所長命令、それに他ならぬ大石さんからの要請ですからね。自分にできる限りの協力はさせていただきます。
いやー、助かりますよ。ともえちゃんがいるといないとでは、この町での捜査活動のやりやすさが全然違ってきますから。
大げさですよ。まあ、それはいいんですがね。ただ
ただ
だったらなんでこんなにも大事なお話をこんなところでやるんですか？
Because the waitresses are cute. That's why.
真面目にやる気がないんでしたら自分はここで失礼しますよ。
Never underestimate the human mind's capacity to take things seriously in an unserious environment. I speak from experience. Chief Inspector Minai raised her voice in a fit of rage and held a hand to her forehead where a blue vein was emerging. And she glared directly at me. What, was this Akasaka's idea? The location couldn't be helped. But maybe it was a little unreasonable. Says you.
いや、私に言われましても、その。
Even though the air conditioning was running at full capacity, it didn't stop the sweat from running down my forehead. I wiped my face several times with a handkerchief. I'm familiar with handkerchiefs, but what's a handkerchief? A hand-shaped handkerchief? I took pride in the fact that I could tolerate nearly any situation, but after hearing a compliment from the person we brought here, I felt compelled to say something. This is Angel Mort, a family restaurant. So they say. Family owned, mayhaps. Oh, who's this gentleman? He's got quite the jawline and a prominent chin. A man stood opposite of Ooshi-san, Chief Yamoki of Kakuchi Station. So this is Chief Yamoki, huh? Wait. Was this guy ever mentioned in any of the main story arcs? I can't remember. He was the one who told us it's a famous chain restaurant in Okinomiya, but it also has location in Kakuuchi, and advised us to meet here. However, after our brief greetings and introductions out front, the moment I stepped into the store, I began to seriously regret the decision. Most of the decor inside the store was your usual family restaurant fare, but aside from that, it was clearly not normal. First and foremost, the waitress's shocking costumes. I've seen more shocking. It seemed the cut was engineered to challenge the limits of ethics, and designed to draw out looks, so I couldn't help but blush just turning my eyes. But I was even more afraid to open the menu. Inside, I saw a colorful parade of girlish, lacy sweets that instantly made my stomach churn. And the majority of the customers in the store spent all their time staring at those two things. In other words, this table with 3 men and 1 career-oriented woman sitting together was drawing a lot of weird looks from the surroundings. Come on, man. Power on through it. Use your police training to just ignore the stares.
いや未来警部はこういう店、初めてですか？
ええ、初めてですよ。当然でしょ。
Nope.
いけませんか？
いや、すみません。
I tried asking that to smooth over the tense atmosphere, but it seemed to have backfired, so I lowered my head in shame. Now, come on now. Can you honestly really have been able to tell that for sure just by looking at her? For all I know, she could have been a frequent customer in a place such as this. You just never know with some people. But even so, why should I be the one to apologize? That's what I want to know. It's not like this was my idea. And then, with timing that felt like pouring water on an oil fire, a waitress walked over to our table.
お待たせしました。ストロベリーサンダーボルトパフェお二つ。どちらにお受けいたしますか？
I'm gonna bet a nickel that it was a Ooshi.
おお、来た来た。
Yes, I won a nickel!
待ってましたよ。それは私と。
私です。
かしこまりました。
With no regard for the tense mood, Ooshi-san turned his attention to the waitress holding the two massive parfaits, and Chief Yamaoki, sitting across from him, rose his hand to signal her. The employees must have been trained to be attentive. The girl in the frilly dress placed the two parfaits in front of them without breaking a smile, then continued to smile as she walked away. Chief Inspector Minai and I felt so embarrassed we wanted to run away. It was a sight to behold. Two filthy old men stuffing their faces into parfaits. Creepy. Too creepy. Oh, come on! You're telling me you weren't giving your old lady some funny looks every once in a while?
いやいや、噂では聞いていましたが、柿内のエンジェルモートにはこんなスペシャルメニューがあるんですね。
And by old lady, I mean his wife, not his mother or anything like that. Just want to avoid any confusion in what I just said there.
こりゃ確かに食べ応えがありそうですよ。
量だけじゃなく味もなかなかのもんなんですよ。私も勧められた時は半信半疑だったんですが、今ではすっかり常連になってます。
ほう、そりゃ楽しみだ。どれどれ？
After saying that, Ooshi-san grabbed his spoon and took a bite. Then, after a quick taste, a delicious sensation smacked him across the face.
この生クリームの濃厚な味、そして甘すぎずしっとりと馴染んだアイスクリームが口どけも良くていい感じです。それに何よりこの大きなイチゴがまたジューシーなことと言ったら、こりゃそこいらの店で売ってるもんじゃありませんね。
おう、わかりますか。いや、実は私も気になって店長に尋ねてみたんですよ。そしたらこれは最近愛知県で新種登録された店長の独自のルートで仕入れている一品中の一品らしくてね。粒も普通のやつより大きくて甘くて、通常は贈答用に使われるほどのものだそうです。
なるほど。いや、そんな革命的な食べ物とこんなところで出会えるとは、私の世界もまだまだ狭いということですね。
I don't know, Ooshi. I think your horizons have already expanded enough as it is. You probably shouldn't expand them more. For your health.
いやいや、私だってこの年になっても新しい発見の連続で毎日が心洗われる思いです。やはり時には自分の枠から出て違う環境に飛び込んでみるのも必要なことですな。
Now, don't knock yourself, Yamaoki. You don't look a day over 4,000.
おめえら、こじゃっぺにしろよ。
A deep, threatening voice echoed across Ooshi-san and Chief Yamaoki's bubbly conversation. I don't know, I'm not feeling particularly threatened at the moment. Right away, I turned to the source of that voice.
般若だ。 ハニャがいる。
Now that's just sad. If you, Mr. Karate Master, are frightened by this, then clearly something went wrong in your training.
どうしたね、見ない警部。君も欲しいのか？
Or maybe I'm just a fearless fool in situations like this. That's also a distinct possibility.
いりません。というか、大事な話をなんでこんな店でしなきゃいけないんですか？
いや、デリケートな内容だから外で話した方がいいって。君も了解したじゃないか。
ええ、了解はしました。でもまさか場所がファミレスだとは思いませんでした。当然でしょ？
Of course.
正気ですか、所長。こんな派手派手の人の多いところで話すくらいなら署の方が何億倍もマシです。つうか非常識にも程があると思いませんか？
いや、別に。
そんな返答出てくる方がおかしいでしょ。仮にも機密情報をこういう場所で話すことの危険性をもっと考えてください。
I think people are too busy stuffing their faces with 20 variants of sugar treats at the moment to really care what you guys are saying. Just saying.
まあまあ、ともいちゃん。ほら、よく言うでしょ。木を隠すなら森の中ってね。こういう場所で話す方が意外にわからないものなんですよ。
その木がクリスマスツリー並みにキンキラキンだったら全然意味ないでしょ。
Then just go into a forest full of Christmas trees. Problem solved. Breathing erratically and still struggling to restrain herself from shouting too much, Chief Inspector Minai verbally assaulted the two of them. Indeed, the parable was a strange thing to say. And then...
見ない警部。それは浅はかというものだ。
は？
周りを見てみたまえ。私たちに関心を向けている気配を持った客が声の届く範囲に果たしているかな。
After Chief Yamaoki said that, I carefully surveyed the people around us. And surprisingly enough, they seemed so engrossed in their conversations that they paid no heed to their surroundings. See? It was just like I told you. Moreover, the table that Chief Yamaoki selected for us was situated in a blind spot relative to the other seats, so the table surface wasn't visible at all. Most of the conversations around us were about the cakes and the waitresses' costumes, and they had strange accents and intonation, as though that's somehow relevant to their indifference towards us.
この前手に入れた限定フィギュアの出来が素晴らしいんだな。
Oh, it's the otaku.
ボディとスカートが分離できるようになっていて。
なんとそんな仕様は当初どこにも書いていなかったでござるよ。
にょほほほ。ただ手に入れたのみで満足することなく、造形師の仕込んだ我々への挑戦を見事クリアしてこそフィギュアマスターへの道が開かれるのであります。
その魔改造ぜひ見てみたいなり。隠された秘宝を皆で分け合うのは同志としての義務なりよ。
Their meaningless conversations went on and on like that. It obviously wasn't some cipher or code. In any case, after assessing the situation and giving it proper consideration, I started to understand why Ooshi-san and Chief Yamaoki chose this location. I did my best to understand. However, even as a man, I had trouble enduring it. For a young woman not acquainted with such a world, it could very well be a living hell. Depends on the woman. Were these two truly the sort of people who could eat together comfortably here? Or were their heads just full of lead? Which is it? Why not both?
おや、どうしましたか、赤坂警視。
いや、別に。
すみませんね、赤坂警視。うちの見ない警部はちょっと融通が利かないところがたまに傷でして。
Now there's something I never heard before. A fly in the ointment.
たまには世界を広げるためにもこういうところに連れ出すことも一つの勉強かと思うのですよ、私は。
Wouldn't a fly in the soup be a better analogy? Especially for a place like this? Since it's a food item and all?
こういう異世界で一体何を学べと言うんですか？
You can learn measurements. Lots and lots of measurements. At least I'm assuming that's what they learn when they come here. Typically.
そりゃもちろん女性としての魅力とは一体何かということにつきますよ。
Once again, it depends on the lady. Lesbians exist, after all.
これだけの男子諸君を引きつけてやまないもの、それはデザートが織りなす甘酸っぱい空間と色気いっぱいのウェイトレスさんの姿。ともいちゃんもよーく見ておけば、いずれ好きな殿方ができた時にコロリッと落とす技がおのずと理解できるというものです。い
やいや、大石さんのおっしゃること全くもってその通りです。もともとの素材が超一級である以上、見ない警部はもっとその良さを磨くべきなんですよ。実際血は争えないというか、さすが彼女のおね。
Now be careful, Yamoki. You're hitting way below the belt with this woman here with that remark. I hope you got some good protection under that shirt of yours.
大石さん、この話はなかったことに。失礼します。
ちょっと見ない警部。
Consider yourself lucky. I think she's shown you a lot of mercy. Chief Inspector Minai got upset and started heading out of the store at that point, so I desperately tried to calm her down. Eventually, her emotions settled. Even so, I'll say it again. Why should I be the one to do this? I had no answer. Because fuck you. That's why. The common universal answer to situations like this. And by the time we made it back to our table, the two parfaits were completely empty.
ウェイトレスさん。
I thought a parfait was a food item, not a container for a food item. So shouldn't that have read the parfaits were consumed or something?
すみませんが、このパフェもう一つおかわりしてもよろしいでしょうか。
Ooshi, what did I just say a minute ago about expanding your horizons? Think, man.
いやいや、大石さん、ここに来て同じメニューを頼んでただ食べるだけではあまりにも芸がない。
Well, hey, if the old thing is good, what's wrong with it?
実はね、警部には内緒でしたが、おすすめのオプションサービスがあるんですよ。例えば。
ほうほう。
Oh, here we go.
こんなサービスがあったんですか？次はこいつでドンといっちゃいましょう。では。
所長。
What did that service entail? Well, why not sit here and find out? That will have to be left to the imagination. Oh, fuck you. But of course, seeing the way the two of them acted filled me with murderous intent. Now, is this sort of thing really worth murdering someone over? Be real here, come on.
私だって島じゃなかったら食べていたのに、あいつら。
Maybe a disapproving glare, perhaps, but murder?
見ない警部、何か？
いえ、別に。
And now the Angel Mort fun has come to an end, and we're back to, well, wherever the hell we're at now. Thursday, June 30th, 1983. The next day, the three of us were heading toward a certain place in Chief Inspector Minai's car. We were traveling to the Kakuuchi service area, the place where the burned corpse of the nurse Mio Takano was first discovered. The Kakuuchi service area runs up the main highway, near the prefectural border. As we entered, I noticed a lot of vehicles parked in the vicinity.
結構な車の数ですね。今日って平日じゃありませんでしたか？
そうですね。今日は特にいっぱいのようですね。あっちが開いたかな。
Once Chief Inspector Minai caught a glimpse of an empty space, she carefully maneuvered the car into the spot. Then she shut off the engine and used the radio to confirm our arrival at the Kakuuchi service area. As I crawled out of the back seat, I could hear the roaring voice of the cicadas in every direction, and I could feel the sunlight burning my skin. The strong early morning sunshine was beating down on the asphalt, gradually heating the surrounding air.
お疲れ様でした。何か飲み物を買ってきましょうか。
いえ、大丈夫です。それにしても、たくさんの人がいますね。
I turned to the shops nearby and let out a sigh. Most of the people seemed to be men dressed like truck drivers, but some also looked like families.
ここは上りも下りも大都市との中間地点にあたりますからね。
Ooh, I see an ice cream shop over there.
次のサービスエリアまで結構ありますし、ちょうどいい小休止の場所になっているんです。それに最近増築されて、食事処や案内所、ガソリンスタンドに郵便ポストまであるんですよ。
ポスト？一体こんな場所で誰が使うんですかね。ちゃんと届くんですか？
さあ、自分もそれは。機会があったら今度試してみますよ。
After saying that, Chief Inspector Minai turned to the buildings beside us. There was a red postbox there with the color faded from weather exposure.
他にもここのスタンドはガソリン税の地域差で高速道路なのに隣の県よりも安いですからね。ここから先はしばらく給油できるところもないし、下り方面からの利用客で結構賑わっています。私も時々利用しますから。
そんなに違うんですか？
ええ、リッター7円も。
なるほど。
That sounds surprisingly frugal. I wonder if I'm just living a luxurious life. I got tongue twisted there for a second. There was a small observatory standing on the edge of a cliff a short distance from the main buildings of the service area. The wire mesh guardrails at the eye level were unpleasant to look at, but I was able to see far off in the distance thanks to the high elevation overlooking an open space.
通報した会社員の話では、ここから山火事を発見したそうです。あそこの少し黒っぽくなっているところがその場所になります。
After saying that, Chief Inspector Minai pointed to the base off a far-off mountain. Indeed, it looked a little out of place next to the surrounding greenery. Nonetheless, it just looked like a black spot or a stain, unless you looked really closely.
しかし、その目撃者はどうしてこの場所から火事の現場を見ることができたんでしょう。ここって自動販売機の置き場や手洗い所からも結構離れていますよね。
I suddenly raised my head to face the challenge. The outside lights were a little far away, and hard to see. Even though it's plenty bright in the daytime, you wouldn't be able to see anything around here in the middle of the night. But despite all the trouble, why would someone take the time to park in the parking lot and visit this observatory?
ええ、自分もその疑問がありましたので尋ねてみました。それによると、用を足そうと手洗い所に行ったら掃除中だったので、我慢ができずここまで来てとのことです。
ほう、 じゃあ今ともえちゃんが立っているあたりがその後なのかもしれませんね。
Chief Inspector Minai instantly reeled back with a confused expression and looked down at her feet. But as soon as she realized Ooshi-san was joking around, her face flushed all the way to her ears, and she began to shout.
大石さん
Good grief. After letting out a sigh, I turned toward the shops. Could this all just be the result of a physiological phenomenon? Still, a small feeling that something was out of place remained, like a thorn in my side. It nestled in the back of my chest and wouldn't disappear.
まあそろそろ冗談はさておきまして本題に入りましょうかね。
After a brief chuckle and lighting a second cigarette, Ooshi-san nonchalantly cut in. After seeing that, Chief Inspector Minai turned to face him with a slightly ignored expression, then cleared her throat. She opened the black bag in her hands and pulled out a document.
まず先日大石さんから依頼のあったお隣の県警本部の鑑識報告が改ざんされていたかどうかのお話ですが、ほぼ9割以上間違いがなさそうです。その中のラベル07の資料を見ていただけますか？
I took the files from her and carefully extracted the file with a clear 07 label on it. Ha! 07. Inside, I found a copy of Mio Takino's autopsy report, written by the forensic team.
告発はしないとの約束で、沢口署の松岡くんが大石さんがおっしゃっていた鉛筆書きの資料以上に確実なやつを見せてくれました。くしゃくしゃに丸めてくずかごに捨てられたものを彼がこっそり保管していたそうです。
There were unique handwritten characters around the entry column. Among them, 2 items were surrounded by large red marks. Discovery time estimated 24 hours after death, and estimated time of death, June 18th, 10 o'clock.
確かに日付が1日違っていますね。
ただの書き損じではないのですか？ゴミとして捨てられていた書類に証明能力はありませんが。
その報告書には担当者以外にその上司である主任、そして鑑識課長の捺印があります。書き損じの書類に責任長がハンコをしたりはしないと思います。
なるほど。
Chief Inspector Minai raised a valid point. In other words, if the reports before the rewrite was valid, the nurse, Mio Takino, who was supposedly killed on June 19th, may have actually died on the day before, June 18th.
しかし高野美代は確かに19日の綿流しの当日会場のあちこちで目撃されています。私も境内の警戒中2度ほどその姿を見かけました。じゃあ私が見たのは彼女の幽霊ってことですか？
あるいは焼殺されたのは高野美代以外の別人か。ただしこの可能性は非常に低そうです。
Unlikely, but it is the truth.
歯の治療跡などで遺体は高野美代本人だと断定できました。
でもそれって死亡推定時刻を改ざんした例の鑑識さんの見立てですよね。だったら少々信憑性の面では心もとないと思いますが。
いえ、それにつきましては自分が直接確かめましたからほぼ間違いないと思います。沖宮の歯科医から取り寄せたカルテと照合してこれを。
After saying that, the chief inspector pulled some photos and charts out of her bag. And a bit of shock ran through me as I looked at the grotesque photograph, but I could clearly see 2 treated cavities in the back row of teeth. And they perfectly matched up with the locations listed in the dental records.
では綿流しの番にいた高野美代はやはり幽霊だなんて言いませんよね。
まさかご冗談を。 ただ死後硬直を遅らせる方法はいろいろとありますが、早める方法はあまり考えられない。ですから一日のズレを作り出したトリックを暴き出すことができれば、犯人像を絞る大きな手がかりになると思います。
Well, the trick was that some documents were falsified.
正式な管轄は沢口署になりますので大っぴらにはできませんが、この件では引き続き捜査を行うつもりです。
よろしくお願いしますね。
Just then, I heard a ringing coming from Chief Inspector Minai's car parked around the corner. That was ringing? She leaned her body in through the driver's side window and grabbed the receiver, then came back to us after exchanging a few words over the radio.
どうしました？
はい、部下の藤田巡査部長からです。
How's Fujita doing?
柿内市に住む南沢村出身者を一通り確認できたとの報告でした。これで最近10年以内に引っ越してきた74世帯全部裏が取れたみたいです。
もうですか。早いですね。
My eyes were open wide. I couldn't hide my surprise. Chief Inspector Minai had a bit of a proud smile on her face.
所長はあんな感じでアンポンタンですが、うちの署の人間はみんな優秀なんです。つい先月も本部長表彰をいただきましたから。
それはすごい。
I also thought it was amazing how proud Chief Inspector Minai was of her subordinates and colleagues. I felt there was true happiness in being able to boast about your comrades and surroundings, rather than your results and awards.
それにしても、どうして柿内市にはhinamizawa沢の出身者がこんなにも多いのでしょう。他の近隣の町と比べても結構な数があって少し驚いたのですが。
もともと柿内市は新興の住宅街ですから、他地域からの流入が多いみたいです。それに加えてやはりこの高速道路が一役買っていると思います。
Chief Inspector Minai saw it. As she saw it, migrant worker families and households who felt inconvenienced by country life had a lot of incentives to move to Kakushi City. First, the transportation network was good. The highway was well maintained, and the commuter rail line had many express stops, making it very easy to get home. On top of that, the land prices were rather reasonable. Though it had been growing rapidly in recent years, it was still an emerging residential area, so it was easy for people on a somewhat stable income to live well, especially compared to the center of a big city. And then, there was job security. In a city growing to become a commuter town, you'd hardly run into any problems finding work, unless you were really strict about your profession and commuting distance. Thanks to all of that, it was a very attractive town for people leaving Hinamizawa village. Still, when the investigation in Okinomiya fell apart and I had to find a backup candidate, this town was strictly the next logical choice. So I never expected to find such an excellent collaborator here. It was truly encouraging.
それじゃあ赤坂さん、早速そのリストを拝見しに参りましょうか。
ええ、南警部、お願いできますか。
了解しました。
I hoped that this attractive town would hold the key I needed to unlock everything. Friday, July 1st, 1983. Then, the following day. Based on the list provided by Kakuchi Station, Ooshi-san and I began to investigate the Hinamizawa natives living in Kakuchi City. There were a total of 74 domestic families from Hinamizawa currently living in Kakuchi City. It wasn't much to go on, and it would be impossible to get through all of them in our short time frame. So, on Ooshi-san's suggestion, we narrowed the list down to the households who relocated from Hinamizawa after the dam conflict began 5 years ago, and we began our investigation from there. But that was still quite a few people. Thankfully, Chief Inspector Minai agreed to cooperate in the investigation so that somewhat reduced the weight of the load. But it would still be a challenge to burn through the entire list.
ここが馬宿町か。
I arrived in Umayado town, where the subjects on the list were relatively concentrated. There was a large station nearby, in an emerging residential area where they recently constructed a new shopping district. While exiting the station, I held a map in hand and searched for the target's house.
確かこの辺りのはずだが。
Given the look of the neighborhood, my first thought was it had to be Natsumi's family, but I don't think it's quite them. Maybe. Umayado town apparently wasn't designed systematically, so the roads were complex. On top of that, the many similarly styled buildings made it hard to catch my bearings, so I could easily get lost if I got careless. Just as I thought. My eyes stopped at a dead end, supporting my fears. So I retraced my steps back to the main avenue. I saw two housewives holding supermarket bags walk past. I felt relieved when I saw them, and I decided to ask for directions.
すみません。この辺りに畠山さんのお宅があるはずなんですが。
Yeah, it wasn't her family. Okay. Their smiles vanished, and they made strange expressions as they looked around and stared at me. Even though I was a stranger, their reactions seemed unnatural.
ご存知ありませんか。畠山一馬さんのお宅を探しているんですが。
That was the name of an old man who moved from Hinamizawa to Omiyado last year. Wait a minute. That was the old man in the nursing facility that Natsumi worked in, right? The one who went mad. After hearing that, the housewife with the longer hair pointed toward a place around the corner.
そうですか。どうも。
畠山さんってあの気味悪いお宅でしょ。あなたどういう関係の方ですか。
いや、昔の知人で。
The two of them backed away with looks of disgust on their faces, like they were trying to distance themselves from something dirty. For the time being, I hung my head and walked away feeling unhappy. Even so, I couldn't help but wonder what they were so spooked about. I have a sneaking suspicion it has to do with the horn dog. Indirectly, of course. With that doubt in the back of my mind, I made my way around the corner they directed me to. And then, I discovered why the housewives called the house creepy.
No.
The colors in this area are inverted. That is creepy. It was a strikingly bizarre sight. When I saw the Hatakeyama house, one thing immediately jumped into my eyes. The life-sized human-shaped white paper figures. 5 of them were hanging from a persimmon tree in the garden, fluttering like Tanabata decorations. Each bore the name of a family member. They are like human effigies, with each containing a person's name handwritten on the middle of the paper. Oh, I see now. This is back before the beginning portion of part 1 of this arc that we saw. Right? Kazuma Hatagiyama, an old man from Hinamizawa who should be turning 70 soon. The one hanging next to it bore the name of his son, Masao, and the figure belonging to Masao's wife, Yoshiko, was hanging on the next branch over. And then, there were two smaller figures bearing the names Aoi and Kentaro. Checking against the list, those were the names of the family's grandchildren, who were 10 and 5 years old respectively.
5人の名前の人型。
The papers contained the names of the entire family fluttered in the wind, like regular strips of paper. Flutter, 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 flutter. No, those 5 pieces weren't the only ones. Looking around, I saw separate sets of 5 paper figures hanging everywhere. They were in the small garden plants too, and around the neck of a petunia blooming in a planter. I also noticed peculiar letters written on the outer wall of the house. Bold black ink characters were written all about. They were difficult to read because they were scribbled and faded, but with enough effort I was able to read them. O benevolent one, O great Oyashiro, grant us this purity. Cleanse us with purity. Hear us. Your fear will cleanse us. Incomprehensible words, like a magic spell. Could it be some sort of Shinto prayer? The name Oyashiro-sama was also written on the gate post, the gate door, and so on, as if to fill every crevice with a prayer.
Oyashiro-sama! Oyashiro-sama!
At that moment, the voice of the cicadas was drowned out by a low, muffled sound coming from an unknown location.
これのかむどこに癒しろのみけみきを捧げ祭りてかしこみかしこみも恋のみ松楽を平らげく安らげくきこしめしてお社の大神の高き広き生かしき
The hoarse, unnatural voice of an old man echoed from inside the house. I struggled to keep my dark thoughts in check, but I calmly pushed the doorbell. After waiting for a while, a man in his mid-40s opened the door just a crack.
どちら様ですか?
Was that a gun cocking I just heard? That was probably the son, Masao Hatagiyama. He seemed to be alarmed and turned his attention to me. The prayer from the back of the house sounded louder and more clear than before.
畠山正夫さんですね。
はい。あなたは？
私、こういうものなんですが。
When I showed him my police badge, Masao suddenly became very frightened. He jumped back, and his complexion changed. It was openly suspicious behavior. He was acting like he had something to hide.
警察が何の用です？うちに何か？
あ、いえ。ただ、お話を伺いたいと。
Masao seemed restless. He was fidgeting and his eyes were running left and right. Maybe something happened. What could he be so afraid of?
何の話ですか？
こちらのご家族は、hinamizawa沢出身だとお聞きしました。
話すことは何もない。お引き取りください。
As soon as I said that, he opened his bloodshot eyes wide and slammed the door shut with a frightening attitude. Immediately afterwards, I heard the rough sound of the door locking. I think you need to choose a different sound effect for a door locking, because hearing what sounds like a gun cocking is very immersion breaking, because last I checked, Only law enforcement and secret service agents and the military in Japan are the only groups of people allowed to carry firearms, legally speaking. So just some random civvy having some firearms is kind of immersion breaking. Know what I mean? But maybe they fix this in future updates to the console arcs. Who knows? The rejection was far beyond my expectations. I could only stand there in shock. I could still hear the low voice of the prayer from inside the house.
Oyashiro no ogami, Oyashiro no ogami, kore no kamudoko ni owasu, kakemaku mo kashikoki, Oyashiro no ogami, Oyashiro no ogami no hiroki atsuki omegumi o katajike nami matsuri, kashikomi, kashikomi.
He continued to repeat those strange words. No wonder the neighbors were so creeped out. Anyway, even though he left Hinamizawa, he still lived in fear of the curse tied to that disaster. Was the existence of Oyashiro-sama so deeply rooted in their hearts?
仕方がない。出直すか。
I let out a sigh and made my way to the gate, but found a woman in her late 30s and a young girl standing there.
Mama?
Since they appear to be returning home, these two must be Masao's wife, Yoshiko, and their daughter, Aoi. A school bag was on her little back, and based on how nicely Yoshiko was dressed, I could speculate that she and her daughter just got back from a parent-teacher conference or something at school.
どなたですか?
Just like Masao, Yoshiko cautiously looked over my whole body. The girl next to her curiously looked up at her mother.
うちに何か。
畠山よし子さんですね。
それが何か。
あなたはお嬢さんの葵ちゃんだね。
うん。
After Aoi answered, she immediately hid behind Yoshiko. Why? Just because I said their names? They were timidly staring at me, as though they wanted to say something.
私、こういうものなんですが。
え?
When I showed Yoshiko my police badge, her expression completely changed. She reacted just like Masao.
何のご用でしょうか。うちのものが何か。
ちょっとですね。お話。
Yoshiko glared at me for a while. Aoi continued clinging to her mother's waist, with a frown on her face.
何のお話でしょうか。
こちらのご家族はhinamizawa出身だと。
話すことは何もございません。お引き取りください。
Then, as soon as the word Hinamizawa came out, Yoshiko pushed me away, grabbed her daughter's hand, and headed toward the entrance. Thinking that reaction was excessive, I immediately rushed over and looked her in the eyes.
ちょっと待ってください。私はただお話を伺いたいだけなんです。お時間は取らせませんから。どうか。
Yoshiko tried to pull the keys out of her bag and unlock the front door, but she was in too much of a hurry and fumbled with the keys. Aoi continued tightly gripping her mother's hand, looking up at me with a frightened expression. Her innocent face overlapped with Miyuki's for a second, and I suddenly held my breath. Then, when Yoshiko withdrew her hand, the girl turned to me with a hateful expression.
おじちゃん、警察の人？
え？あ。
After hearing that unexpected question from the child, I looked back, but struggled to find the words to reply. Looking closely, Her eyes weren't filled with the fear from a moment ago, but seemed to have a persuasive color to them.
おじちゃんは悪い人を捕まえに来たの？
いや、違うよ。私たちは困った人を助けに来ているんだ。
Aoi's eyes wandered in thought after hearing that. Then she lifted her head as though she had decided something.
あのね。
I have a feeling your mother's gonna cut you off.
葵ちゃん、何も言わなくていいの。
Unfortunately, the moment Aoi opened her mouth, Yoshiko interrupted by yelling at her. The threatening attitude caused her to cower and tremble. What the hell happened to the people in this house? It wasn't just Yoshiko. This girl knew something too, and her mother's unruly attitude only suppressed her urge to communicate it.
早く、葵ちゃん。
The mother finally succeeded in unlocking the door, so Aoi disappeared into the house. The front door made a terrible sound as it slammed shut. Then I could hear the sound of the chain being violently locked from the inside.
何なんだ一体。
The neighborhood grew quiet again. I was stunned for a while by what had happened. But with no other options, I let out a dreary sigh and turned around. But just then, what now? I sensed the peculiar presence of another person, so I hid in the nearby alley. There was nobody there. The presence I sensed a moment ago was just an illusion, and it faded away. Thinking that over, I stopped for a while to carefully listen to my surroundings. But of course, I could only hear the howl of the cicadas, and the faint sounds coming from the back of the Hatakeyama house.
Oyashiro no Ogami, Oyashiro no Ogami. これのかむどこにおわすかけまくも賢きおやしろの大神おやしろの大神の広き厚きお恵みをかたじけなみ祭りかしこみかしこみ
It was the deep voice of the old man Kazuma Hatakeyama, still reciting that prayer. Setting that aside, I turned to look at the other nearby houses. However, all the houses appeared vacant, or at least pretending to be. There was nobody for me to talk to. At the end of the day, I returned to the Kakuuchi police station. On the way back to the temporary desk Chief Inspector Minai set up for me, I noticed Ooshi-san chatting with a woman in the break room. It sounded like the voice of the woman I spoke to on the radio earlier, Chief Inspector Minai's sister, Maraka-san.
ああ、お疲れ様です。
おかえりなさい、赤坂さん。うわ、すごい汗。
Maraka-san rushed to her feet and grabbed a damp towel out of the fridge. I accepted it with thanks and pressed it against my sweltering face. The cold towel felt soothing and refreshing.
それじゃあクラちゃん、またね。
また次の機会にでもゆっくりお話ししましょうね。
Maraka waved to Ooshi-san and bowed to me, then headed out of the break room. After that send-off, Ooshi-san let out a tired sigh and lit a cigarette.
今日も暑かったですからね。明日は雨が降るみたいですが。
ええ。すみません。お邪魔してしまったみたいで。
I bought 2 cans of coffee from the vending machine and sat in front of Ooshi-san. He gave me a confused look for a moment, as if he didn't understand what I meant. But after a quick thought, he smiled and waved his hands in the air.
赤坂さん、それちょっとお気遣いが過ぎるってやつですよ。私とまどかちゃんはそういうのじゃありませんから。これ本当ですよ。
そうですか。それは失礼しました。
I apologize for speaking a bit off point. Even so, Maka-san and Ooshi-san seemed rather well acquainted for 2 people who would rarely interact on police-related matters. So I thought there might have been something else going on.
話も別に大したことじゃないです。ちょいと人生相談を引き受けていただけですよ。彼女のね。
人生相談？
多分遅かれ早かれ赤坂さんもお聞きになると思いますがね。彼女もうすぐ結婚するんですよ。
それはおめでたいことですね。
Shame, Detective Minai doesn't feel that way.
ねえ、確かにいいお話です。ただ、その結婚にはお姉さんが猛烈に反対しているらしくて、現在もまだ延期中なんですよ。それで悩み相談ってわけです。
お姉さん、見ない警部がですか？
The face of the witty chief inspector flashed through my mind for a moment. Indeed, as the older sister, she was probably looking out for her little sister when she took a hard stance against Monika's fiancé.
しかし、そんなに反対するってことは、よほど相手が悪いんですか？
いえいえ、相手は人格、社会的地位ともに立派な人ですよ。
And quite the age gap.
なんて言ったって、警察署の署長さんなんですから。
Well, that too. I immediately spat out the coffee I was drinking. The chief of Kakuuchi Station?
はい、そのまさかなんですよ。山沖署長さんがまどかちゃんのお相手ってわけです。だから赤坂さん、彼女に変なことしたら間違いなく血を見ますよ。
いや、そんなの考えたこともないですよ。
But it was truly shocking. Chief Yamaoki was younger than Ooshi-san, but he still should be in his 50s at least. Oh, wait, that's Yamaoki. I don't know why he didn't make the connection earlier. Plus, even in his youth, he was a well-regarded detective with sharp eyes and a sharper sword. He couldn't open his mouth without demonstrating the huge gap between them. And that man was Monika-san's fiancé.
まあ、その件は今度ゆっくりお話しするとして、どうでしたか、そちらの方は。
馬宿町の何軒かの家、どこも留守でしたが、畠山という家では、かろうじて家の人の顔を見ることができました。と言っても、ほとんど門前払いですが。
ああ、畠山さんね。確か70過ぎのじいさんがいる家でしたっけ。で、何か話してくれましたか？
Ooshi-san held a piece of paper in his hand and placed a check mark next to the entry for Atakiyama family. I shook my head and took a sip of my coffee, then continued.
やはりというか、何も話してはくれませんでした。収穫はゼロです。
そうですか。
予想はしていたつもりでしたが、老人だけでなく、若夫婦も、子供もです。誰も、頑なに口を開こうとしない。
どこの家も同じですね。
口を聞くどころか、
まるで疫病神みたいな態度ですか。
ええ、まあ。
I slowly nodded to confirm Ooshi-san's observation. Right. They were treating us as though we were bringing a curse upon them.
その話を聞きに行って自分がたたり扱いとはね。なシャレにもなりませんな。
Ooshi-san let out a dry laugh. It seemed like he and I were lamenting the same observation.
何かどこかの方から口止めがかかっているとか？
それはわかりません。もっとよく調べてみないと。それよりも気になったのが魔除けですね。
魔除け？
ちょっと他では聞いたことのないような薄気味悪い祝詞を唱えたり、外壁にOyashiro-samaの文字を書きつけたり、面用というか、なんというか。
Kazuma Hatakeyama's prayers resounded in my ears and wouldn't cease.
お社の大神、お社の大神、これのかむどこにおわす、かけまくも賢き、お社の大神。
The voice I heard from the back of the house. It didn't sound like worship for Oyashiro-sama. It sounded like a desperate attempt to ward off a curse. And that wasn't the only strange thing. When I visited that house, one thing immediately jumped into my eyes. Those life-sized human-shaped paper figures, with the names of each family member written on them. It looked like a ritual from an ancient shrine or some occult sorcery, not something you'd see in a small residential district.
確かに見ていて気色のいいものではありませんね。
Plus, they were hanging in sets, all fluttering together.
あれですか。赤坂さんも見たんですね。
ええ。それじゃやはり大石さんも？
私も見ましたよ。そして壁に何やら読み取れない呪文。いわゆる祝詞も延々と書かれていましてね。
I remembered it too. The eerie sight of the walls covered in writing. Kazuma Hatakeyama's prayers still echoed in my ears. And those same words were written on the wall too.
お社の大神、お社の大神、これのかむどこにおわす、かけまくも賢き、お社の大神の広き厚きお恵みを、かたじけなみ祭り、かしこみ、かしこみ。
What did those words mean? What was he trying to say? I had no idea. However, seeing his sheer persistence made me feel even more terrified than bewildered.
大石さん。
Just then, a voice called in from the outside the break room, so we both turned our heads. Chief Inspector Minai had just come back from an investigation, carrying a large paper bag. Hamburgers?
お疲れ様です、ともいちゃん。今日も暑かったでしょう。
そうですね。今日は留守も含めて6軒回ってきました。あ、夕食まだなので失礼してもよろしいですか？
ええ、どうぞ。
After I encouraged her, Chief Inspector Minai said excuse me, then sat on the chair across from me and spread the paper bag open. And I was startled the moment I saw it. Hamburgers, right? Lots and lots of hamburgers? There were at least 10 hamburgers in that oversized paper bag. Called it! No, 20. No, even more than that. It was completely packed.
はあ、お腹すいた。
Once again, I ask you, Where do you put all of it after eating it?
どうしました赤坂警視。
いや、別に。
Is she going to eat all that by herself? Feeling it best not to say anything more, I turned to Ooshi-san. He gave me a forced smile while shrugging his shoulders. This was apparently a normal portion size for Chief Inspector Minai. You are in the presence of really interesting company, Akasaka. An old perv and a young glutton.
あ、すみません警視。実は歯医者に行ってて昼食取りそびれてしまったので、その分もっと。
Yeah, but even I would probably have my stomach explode if I ate an entire paper bag's worth of hamburgers. No, that's not the point.
やっぱりハンバーガーが好きな女って変ですか？
No, not at all. Question, I think the real issue is how much you're able to eat without it popping up anywhere on you. That wasn't it either. However, Ooshi-san signaled that it would be best not to pursue the subject, so I kept quiet. Even so, she was quite the high-spirited lady. I felt confident that I had more stamina than anyone in the public security office, but she could easily blow me away. I suddenly stared at Chief Inspector Minai as she unwrapped another hamburger. After hearing her story earlier, I couldn't stop thinking about it. She and Monica were orphans. They both had no other living relatives. Living in that sort of relationship all these years and suddenly dealing with her sister's marriage. And to make it worse, the groom was her boss. Would I be able to keep a clear head if I were in that situation? That was a stupid question. Of course not. And Monica-san had to choose between breaking off her marriage to Chief Yamaoki or agreeing to the marriage without the blessing of her only living family member? It was such a lonely story. But since I had no personal connection to Chief Inspector Minai, there was nothing I could do to persuade her. But for now, there was nothing anyone could do about it. I wondered what Ooshi-san thought of this dispute.
何か？
ああ、いえ。そういえば、見ない警部。何か変わったことはありましたか？
なんというか、あったというよりも、変わったことばかりで少々面食らっています。
Such as? Then Chief Inspector Minai skillfully flipped open her notebook with one hand and provided us with a brief report on her investigation. There were some small differences, but it was nearly identical to my own experience, so I only half listened. However...
あ、そうそう。自分が今日調べてきた対象者の中には、生贄の儀式をやっている家がありました。
生贄
That was the first I'd heard of this.
身代わりというものでしょうか。鶏か何かの鳥を屠殺して何羽かをまとめて庭の木に吊るしていました。住民たちの話を聞いていると、何でもたたりを代わってくれるおまじないだそうで。
何ですかそれは。
詳しい話は直接聞くことができなかったんですが、ちょうど木に鳥の死体を吊るしている現場に出くわしましたので、壁越しに様子を伺ってきました。そしたら老人の声が聞こえてきまして、許しておくれ、わしらの身代わりだ、許しておくれ、わしらの身代わりだと。要請を受けて保健所には連絡したんですが、鳥だと食用の場合もありますから注意くらいしかできないそうです。自分としてもどうにも対応に困った次第で。
I could picture the scene in my mind. In a dimly lit room, holding the still living chickens down and offering them at the altar. The birds sorrowfully cried out, begging for their lives. But the old man didn't care about the cries of the animals, and he wouldn't stop. So he lifted the kitchen knife overhead. A deluge of sticky blood came flowing out. The old man opened his eyes wide as he repeated,
許しておくれ。わしらの身代わりだ。わしらの身代わりだ。許しておくれ。わしらの身代わりだ。
The old man's words mixed together the prayer I heard outside the Hatakeyama house.
お社の大神、お社の大神。これのかむどこにおわす。かけまくも賢き。お社の大神。お社の大神の広き厚きお恵みをかたじけなみ祭りかしこみかしこみ
Those old men recited their prayers as they took the lives of weak, innocent creatures. Well, the way I see it, better some bears and poultry than humans.
写真もいくつか撮ってきましたので、今現像に回しています。出来上がったらお二人にもお見せしますよ。
Even so, the curse never came for the people who left Hinamizawa. Right? And could there really be a so-called curse in the first place? Then, why was he afraid of the curse? I didn't understand. The blind faith of these old men was a total mystery.
赤坂警視？
はい。
Chief Inspector Minai looked at me with a dubious expression. She must have noticed my face darkening while I imagined the sacrificial ceremony from her report.
すみません。薄気味の悪い話を聞かせてしまって。
あ、いえ。むしろ、お社様のたたりが、ここまで得体の知れないものだったのかと、どうにも、釈然としなくって。
Standing next to me, Ooshi-san turned toward me while scratching the back of his head. Then he nodded with a wry smile.
お社様って神様は、本来村に住む人間が結束するための、ただの象徴的な存在であったはずなんですがね。人形とか生贄とか、そんな古臭い祭礼の作法、もうとっくの昔に廃れたもんだと思っていましたよ。
あったんですか？以前は。
ばあ様の時代にね。かれこれ40年以上も昔、赤坂さんも巴ちゃんも生まれていなかった頃の話ですよ。
It was such a far-off tale. Why were these fossil-like customs Why were those fossil-like customs were being dug up now?
まあそんな様子じゃ私たちに情報提供なんて断固拒絶でしょう。ここも沖宮と同じかもしれませんね。
あ、いえ。それでも少しは収穫がありました。移り住んだのは5年前なんですが、Hinamizawaに在住していた祖父を去年に引き取った畠山という家に行ってきまして。
畠山？
Hearing a familiar name, I raised my head. After double checking, that was definitely the house I visited today.
そうだったんですか？すみません。うっかり同じところを回ってしまったみたいで。
いえ、それはいいんです。それより、よく話が聞けましたね。確かあそこは、二人ともかなり非協力的で、私は完全に空振りだったんですが。
ええ、息子夫婦は全然ダメでした。ただ、近くの公園で見かけた女の子が、 偶然その家のお孫さんということで少しだけ話ができたんです。
What'd she tell you? A girl. Hearing that reminded me of the look on the face of the little girl who lifted her head to tell me something. That must have been Aoi.
ええ、その葵ちゃんです。公園で友達にいじめられて泣いていたんですよ。
いじめられていた？
はい。
Chief Inspector Minai furrowed her brow and nodded. I could imagine why without needing to ask. Someone probably saw the strange decorations at Aoi's house and told all her friends, so they started making fun of her. An adult would be able to endure that. They'd even be able to acknowledge their role in the ordeal and take responsibility for it. But how could a child be responsible for any of this? It was a completely irrational train of thought.
それでどんな内容ですか？
はい。それが
According to Chief Inspector Minai, Kazuma was undergoing rehab at the Seiki Hot Care and Welfare Center, but he came back home last weekend at Yoshiko's request.
葵ちゃんの話ではどうやらカズマ氏の誕生日だったようです。心身の状態も良好ということもあり、よしこ氏の仕事の都合も偶然ついたので、彼は2週間の期限付きで家に戻ってきたとの話でした。
When he first came back, he spent time in the park with his grandchildren, visited the neighbors, and played shogi with old friends. It seems like there were no significant changes. But a few days later, the great Hinamizawa disaster struck. Kazuma's behavior completely changed after that day.
本当は今日センターに戻る予定だったのですが、明日に延期したようですね。今の状態で戻せば最悪入所を拒否される可能性もありますから。
After saying that, Chief Inspector Minai handed us a report on the Hatakeyama family. She must have put that together before coming here. That means, if she goes to that care center tomorrow, she might be able to speak with Kazuma directly.
見ない警部。これって次回は私たちも同行した方がよろしいでしょうか？
あ、いえ。私もここに来るまで迷っていたんですが、どうも葵ちゃんの話ではカズマ氏は少々自閉的になっているそうなので、次回も私一人で聞き込みをしたいと思います。お二人の話を聞く限り、ひなみ沢の人たちのお社様信仰は相当深いようなので、センターの関係者も含めて慎重に行うつもりです。
そうですか。
ただ手応えがありましたらすぐにポケベルへ連絡します。すみませんが、赤坂警視と大石さんは残りの別件をお願いできますか？
わかりました。もし何かありましたらいつでも呼んでください。
Chief Inspector Minai handed us each of us a pager, and I slipped mine into my pocket. Then, she said she had another matter to attend to, so she left the break room.
すごいですね。
すごいでしょう。
I looked over at the beautifully flattened paper bag full of hamburger wrappers in the trash can.
見かけによらず健胆家なんですね。
Even so, how can so many burgers fit inside her slender body? And not just that, how is she able to continue eating like that while talking about sacrificial rituals?
大した女性です。本当に。
いやー、全くあの子を見ていると父親のことを思い出しますよ。
父親？見ない警部のお父さんも警察の方だったんですか？
Ooshi-san nodded, then stopped to light a cigarette. His eyes narrowed in thought, and I could see the smoke puff out as he began to speak.
過激派の山荘籠城事件でご一緒しましたが、捜査員全員が長期戦でへばっている中、一人だけカップラーメンを何杯もかっくらってね。胃袋が鉄でできているんじゃないかと本気で思いましたよ。 しかもその翌日の突入で裏口から逃げ出した主犯格の一人をぶん投げて確保しちまって、警視庁にもすごい奴がいるもんだと感心したもんです。生きていれば赤坂さんの上司になっていたかもしれませんね。絶対こいつは偉くなるって確信してたんですが。
I caught a hint of loneliness in Ooshi-san's tone. So, apparently Chief Inspector Minai's father was a public safety officer. And he had already passed away.
いやいや、すみませんね。柄にもなくしんみりしちゃいましたよ。
いえ、そんな。大石さん。南井警部のお父さんは亡くなられたのですか？
ねえ、事故です。いや、むしろ殉職だと思っています。
殉職？それって。
But just then, suddenly, an alarm went off in the room. We received a report from prefectural police headquarters about a new incident.
よりにもよって。
And here we are. Climbing out of the car, Chief Inspector Minai looked up at the house where the crime occurred. While grinding her teeth and clenching her fists. However, she quickly returned to her senses and started barking orders to her subordinates running around the crime scene.
藤田君と花田君、野じ馬のラインをもっと下げて。安藤さんは機捜の速水さんを呼んできてください。
はい。ほら、下がって。あそこ邪魔だ。
No entry tape was already installed, and mobile investigators from prefectural police headquarters had already begun an on-site investigation. Eventually, one of the detectives who entered the house ran over to Chief Inspector Minai.
速水さん、容疑者は助かりそうですか？
The elderly detective named Hayami silently shook his head toward Chief Inspector Minai. And then, a stretcher covered in a white cloth came rolling out at the entrance of the house. It was the worst-case scenario.
大石さん。
Ooshi-san remained silent and continued staring at the entrance of the house. No way. I never would have expected the situation to take such a sudden turn.
すみません、通ります。
One member of the mobile investigation team passed by me and rushed over to a parked police car, then grabbed the wireless receiver and began to report. Just seeing how things looked out here, it was clear how much of a disaster the work site must be.
殺人事件現場の馬宿町から小畑清宅の現場検証を報告します。被害者は畠山一馬氏で、死因は出血死。胸部と頸部の数箇所を容疑者の持参した文化包丁で刺された模様。他に
The commotion had consumed the surrounding cityscape. Spectators were flocking to the scene, rushing to see what had happened. Ooshi-san and I could only stand by and watch the investigators running around like that. Looking back, I saw a familiar house. The Hatayama house that I visited earlier today. One detail in the corner made the scene all the more peculiar. It looked like there was a TV reporter in the front of the crowd, holding a camera and beginning an on-site broadcast.
本日午後6時過ぎ、馬宿町の小畑清容疑者宅を訪れていた畠山一馬さんが、突然包丁を持って襲いかかった容疑者に襲われ、死亡しました。
It looked like a live broadcast. Despite all the chaos and excitement, the reporter remained calm and articulate.
被害者は畠山一馬さんで、小畑容疑者の向かいの家に住んでおりました。なお、小畑容疑者は犯行後に自ら凶器を喉に突き立て、自殺したとのことです。
And then, the next words caused us to shudder.
たった今続報が届きました。 小畑容疑者は7年前柿内市に移住するまでは先日大災害のあったhinami沢村の隣町沖宮に住んでいて、畠山さんとは数少ない友人関係にあったそうです。この事件について警察の発表は
7 years ago. Our investigation list only goes back 5 years. Do we need to alter our investigation to include people who left Hinamizawa before the dam conflict began in 1978? This is serious. It was difficult enough just going back 5 years. How far back do we need to look? The expanding scope of the investigation suddenly made me feel nauseous.
大石さん。
Before long, Chief Inspector Minai finished preparing arrangements and came back to us.
勝間氏の家族には被害が及んでいないようです。ただ、事情聴取を行うには動揺が激しくて、なんとも。
My fists clenched wildly, and I began to tremble. Then, right there.
姫さん、大変だ。こっちへ来てくれ。
速水さん。
Seeing the blood rush to Detective Hayami, Chief Inspector Minai opened her eyes wide. Then, after glancing at us strangers, he whispered something in her ear.
それは本当ですか？
間違いない。菅谷には山村課長と高屋敷が、沢渡には刑事二課の連中が向かったらしい。いずれも死傷者が出て、容疑者は犯行現場で自殺している。
菅谷って今日私の言ったまさかそんなことって。
Chief Inspector Minai's eyes opened wide, and her lips began to tremble. Her skin went pale, and she couldn't hide her reaction.
どうしたのですか、Minai警部。
菅谷で一家無理心中事件が起こったそうです。自宅に放火して被疑者は家族ともども焼死したとのこと。他にも沢渡では介護センターの大浴場で数名を巻き込み、自らも死亡。
3 separate incidents.
それって
菅谷は私が調査に行ったところです。そして沢渡は
私ですね。おそらくそこは私が会ったばあさんのいる介護センターでしょう。
やっぱり。じゃあ今日起こった事件の容疑者はみんなhinamizawa出身者ってことなの？なんで？
警部？
Overwhelmed with shock, Chief Inspector Minai repeatedly pounded on the wall beside her, then tilted her head back and groaned. After seeing that, her team of detectives came running over, but she held up a hand to say, "I'm fine." Then she shook her head, and she walked with Detective Hayami to the police car.
大石さん、これは一体どういうことでしょ
う。どうですかね。赤坂さん、偶然だと思われますか？
My heart was shouting, "There's no way this could be a coincidence." Maybe my heart was shouting loud enough that Ooshi-san could hear it. But still, how could I answer that? Would I be admitting the curse is real if I said it wasn't a coincidence? Possible. That can't be possible. New tips unlocked. A psychosomatic medical report. Well, it's not just a single whammy or a double whammy, but a triple whammy. Today is just not your guys' day. Like, holy crap. So, what do we have here? Name, redacted, 14. Gender, female. Address, redacted, Okinomiya, Shishibone City. Remarks, attended middle school in the city. Medical exam contents. Blood testing was performed to identify the cause of sudden fainting symptoms during everyday activity. Originally investigated by the Shishibone General Hospital Department of Medicine on the suspicion of blood disease, anemia, but due to the sudden onset of migraines of unknown origin, the doctor advised her to enroll in psychosomatic counseling. Diagnosis: moderate to severe autonomic ataxia? I do not know what that is. Due to the risk of chronic symptoms, hospitalization is strongly recommended. Planning to begin pharmacotherapy after carefully explaining the circumstances to both parents and obtaining their consent. Also, considering the psychological stress on the patient herself, the explanation to be provided is the treatment of blood disease. Let me guess. Is this redacted patient by any chance the unknown girl that Chisato's been referring to all this time? Other notes. Personal information is to be strictly protected. The text below that at that point is unreadable scribbles in German. German, huh? I don't have anything super tangible to base this on, but a gut feeling. But the gut feeling tells me that this could be indeed the unknown girl that I've been wondering about for some time now. The one that Chisato can't seem to get over. I need to make a mental note to myself to look up that condition that was mentioned later. That might definitely at least give me some context as to why this girl is in the hospital to begin with, if nothing else. Well, looks like I got my wish after all. Today's episode was definitely a little more on the exciting side than the last one. But I will admit, I wasn't expecting to see a triple whammy murder-suicide thing happen. Like, just one, maybe two at the most. And yet, I find it interesting that I do find it a little interesting that all three of these incidents occurred right around the time that our three detectives decide to look into each of them. So I can't help but think if I can't help but wonder if them visiting these three different families ended up causing them to go into such a blind panic to where they decide to just murder and kill themselves. So if that's the case, then basically we indirectly ended up killing three families today with our investigation. Which would really suck if that were true, but given the information we have to work with so far, that seems, to me at least, to be the most likely case here. Not good. Not good at all. So, as far as our main leads here are concerned, three different leads that they investigated today all went up into smoke within the same time frame as each other, right before their eyes. And so, not only are they, I would say that they're right back where they started, but I would say that they're worse off than that. If anything, they now got a lot more questions to ponder than when they started. So, not terribly sure what they're gonna do next time. But, I mean, what else can they do other than charge on forward following any lead that they have available to them, no matter how tiny or insignificant it can be. So I guess my main question is, what possible leads could they have next after this? And I can't think of anything. Well, all that aside, I think I'm going to go ahead and end things here. I hope everyone enjoyed this latest episode of the Higurashi When They Cry console arcs. If you did, and you want to see more content from me, feel free to subscribe to my channel. Also, feel free to hit that like button. It helps me get my videos out and get my videos out to more people. Makes my content look a little more favorable in the YouTube algorithm. I will see you all next time. Take care.